Most of our suffering comes from attachment. Attachment to expectations, outcomes, and emotions we can't control. We get frustrated when people don't act the way we think they should. We get anxious when life doesn't go according to plan. We get consumed by emotions that spiral out of control. But what if I told you that true freedom comes from letting go? The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Detachment isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming unshakable. It's about learning to control what you can, release what you can't, and respond to life's challenges with clarity, strength, and resilience. This is the path to true emotional mastery. In this video, we're going to break down 7 Stoic principles that will help you master detachment and develop ultimate emotional freedom. These aren't just ideas, they're practical strategies that you can start applying today. If you've ever felt controlled by your emotions, if you've ever felt like life was dictating your happiness instead of you taking charge, this video is for you. So, let's dive in. Principle 1. Control what you can. Let go of what you can't. Most of our suffering doesn't come from reality itself. It comes from our resistance to it. We struggle not because of external events, but because of our attachment to how we think things should be. We expect the world to be predictable, people to behave rationally, and events to unfold in ways that suit our desires. But life doesn't operate on our terms. It is indifferent to our expectations. When things don't go as planned, we spiral. We feel frustrated, disappointed, even betrayed. We replay scenarios in our minds, thinking of what we should have said or done differently. We try to mentally rework the past, even though no amount of thought will change what has already happened. This mental resistance doesn't change reality. It only prolongs our suffering. But here's the truth. Suffering is amplified when we fight battles we were never meant to win. This is where the dichotomy of control, one of the most important Stoic principles, comes in. The Stoic mindset teaches us that everything in life can be divided into 2 categories: things we can control and things we cannot. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, summarized this perfectly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. He understood that most of our mental distress doesn't come from external circumstances. It comes from our own minds. We create suffering by clinging to expectations, dwelling on fears, and obsessing over things we have no power to change. The illusion of control in modern life. Think about modern life. How much time do people waste worrying about things beyond their control? They obsess over politics, over the economy, over whether strangers on the internet approve of them. They stress over the weather, over past mistakes, over things that may never even happen. They let their emotions rise and fall with news headlines, with the opinions of others, with circumstances completely beyond their influence. But here's what the Stoics knew. No amount of anxiety will change the outcome of events outside your control. Think about that. No amount of stress will change the stock market, erase an argument from yesterday, or force someone to behave differently. Yet people trade their peace of mind for worry, their inner strength for helplessness. They spend so much time trying to control what they can't that they neglect what they can. The solution? Radical clarity. The path to emotional detachment. The circle of control. The next time you feel stressed, frustrated, or overwhelmed, ask yourself one simple question. Is this within my control? If it is, take action. If it isn't, let it go. This is where the circle of control exercise becomes a powerful tool. Imagine 2 circles. The inner circle, things you can control. Your thoughts, your actions, your words, your choices, your response to adversity. The outer circle, things you cannot control. Other people's opinions, the past, random events, global crises, how someone else feels about you. Every time you catch yourself stressing over something, Visualize these two circles. Where does this problem belong? If it's outside your circle of control, let it go. Instead of wasting your energy on things you can't change, redirect it towards self-mastery, personal growth, and resilience training. Because that's where your true power lies. What does this look like in real life? Let's say you're stuck in traffic, running late for an important meeting. You can't control the traffic, but you can control your response. Instead of sitting there fuming, getting more frustrated with every passing minute, you can accept the reality. This is outside of my control. Getting angry won't make the traffic move faster. Instead, you could use that time to listen to an audiobook or podcast that helps you grow. Practice deep breathing to calm your mind. Mentally prepare for the meeting so you arrive composed rather than flustered. Or let's say someone insults you. You can't control their words, but you can control whether you react emotionally. Instead of feeling offended, instead of wasting mental energy replaying the moment, you can apply the Stoic perspective. Their words belong to them, not to me. I don't have to accept their negativity. You reclaim your power by not engaging, not reacting, and not letting their emotions dictate yours. This is true emotional detachment. How to apply this principle daily? To train this mindset, try this 3-step Stoic reflection every evening. 1. Think about your day. Identify moments where you felt frustrated or stressed. 2. Ask yourself, was this inside my control or outside of it? 3. Decide, if it was outside your control, release it. If it was within your control, commit to handling it better next time. The more you do this, the stronger your mental resilience becomes. You'll notice yourself becoming less reactive, less emotionally drained, and more in control of your inner world. The power of letting go. A Stoic doesn't waste time trying to bend the universe to their will. They master themselves instead. They control what they can and detach from what they cannot. This isn't indifference. This is freedom. Because when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you gain something far greater: clarity, strength, and the ability to focus on what truly matters. And this leads us to the next critical principle: learning to reframe our perspective on life's events. Because once we've identified what we can and cannot control, the next step is changing how we interpret what happens to us. Principle 2. Reframe your perspective on events. Life doesn't happen to us. It happens through us. Every experience we encounter is filtered through our perception, shaped by our beliefs, expectations, and past experiences. Two people can face the exact same challenge, yet interpret it in entirely different ways. One sees a crisis, the other sees an opportunity. One sees failure, the other sees a lesson. One feels trapped, the other feels tested. The difference isn't in the event, it's in the meaning attached to it. This is the foundation of the Stoic reframing method, the idea that we can choose how we interpret the events in our lives. Epictetus, another great Stoic thinker, put it this way: it's not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. In other words, it's not what happens to us that causes suffering, it's the story we tell ourselves about it. The meaning we assign to an event determines whether we feel defeated or empowered. The power of perception. Consider this scenario. You lose your job. This is an undeniable reality, but the way you perceive it will dictate how you experience it. You have two options. 1. This is a disaster. My life is ruined. I'll never recover from this. 2. This is an opportunity. I was meant for something greater. Now I have the chance to pivot and build something better. The same event, but two completely different experiences. The first perspective leads to despair and helplessness, while the second leads to motivation and action. What's important to understand is that reframing doesn't change reality. It changes how you experience it. And how you experience something shapes your response, your emotions, and ultimately, your future. From obstacle to opportunity. This ability to reframe setbacks as stepping stones is what separates the weak from the resilient. Every adversity carries within it a lesson, a hidden advantage, if you're willing to see it. A great example of this is Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor of Rome. He faced wars, betrayals, and personal losses. Yet instead of seeing them as misfortunes, he reframed them as training for his mind and character. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This means that the very thing we see as an obstacle is often the key to our greatest growth. Think about some of the most successful, resilient people in history. Almost all of them faced major failures and hardships. But instead of being paralyzed by their misfortunes, they used them as fuel to push forward. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. Oprah Winfrey was told she was unfit for television. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. What if they had seen their failures as proof they weren't good enough? What if they had let their setbacks define them? They didn't. Instead, they reframed failure as feedback and used it to improve. And this isn't just about famous figures. Think about your own life. How many times has something that initially seemed like a disaster led you to something better? Maybe a failed relationship forced you to grow and become stronger. Maybe losing a job pushed you toward a career you truly love. Maybe a painful experience taught you something that changed your life. This is why learning to reframe is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. It allows you to turn pain into wisdom, loss into learning, and setbacks into strategy. The cognitive reframing drill. To develop this ability, practice the cognitive reframing drill whenever something negative happens. Before reacting, ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. What else could this mean? Instead of assuming the worst, look for another explanation. 2. How could this actually be working in my favor? Consider the possibility that this setback is setting you up for something better. 3. What lesson is hidden in this challenge? Every struggle carries wisdom. Find it. By doing this consistently, you train your brain to see problems differently. You stop feeling like a victim of life and start feeling like a student of it. Applying this daily. The 5-minute reframing exercise. Take 5 minutes each night to reflect on any frustrating event of the day. Ask yourself, did this event really harm me, or did it just challenge me? How can I turn this into something beneficial? Will this still matter in 5 years? By doing this, you develop emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and an unshakable mindset. Over time, you start seeing life differently. You'll notice yourself reacting less and responding more. You'll feel less stressed, less anxious, and more in control. Because when you change how you see the world itself changes. The ultimate freedom. Mastering your mindset. A person who can reframe any situation is unstoppable. Nothing can break them because they don't see anything as breaking them. They see everything as building them. Imagine waking up every day with the mindset that every setback is a setup for a comeback. Every problem carries a lesson. Every failure is an opportunity to improve. This is the Stoic superpower, and you can develop it too. And this leads us to the next critical principle, the importance of voluntary discomfort. Because once you master your perception, the next step is to train yourself to thrive under difficult conditions. Principle 3. Train voluntary discomfort. We live in the most comfortable era in human history. Everything is designed for convenience. Food, entertainment, and transportation are available at the tap of a screen. Modern technology eliminates friction, making life faster, easier, and more accessible than ever before. Yet, paradoxically, despite this unprecedented level of comfort, people today are more anxious, fragile, and emotionally reactive than ever before. Why? Because excessive comfort weakens the mind. When life is too easy, we lose our resilience. We become mentally unprepared for hardship, emotionally vulnerable to minor setbacks, and dependent on comfort to function. The result? The moment we face difficulty, a rejection, a failure, an unexpected challenge, we crumble. But hardship isn't the enemy. The real danger is not being prepared for it. The ancient wisdom of voluntary discomfort. The Stoics understood this long ago. That's why they intentionally practiced voluntary discomfort, deliberately exposing themselves to small hardships to build mental resilience, emotional detachment, and inner strength. Seneca, despite his immense wealth, didn't allow himself to become dependent on luxury. He would sleep on the floor, wear rough clothing, and eat simple meals. But why would a rich man deliberately choose discomfort? Because he wanted to prove to himself that he could endure hardship. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, so that you may see what it is to live at the lowest level." What's the lesson here? The more we voluntarily expose ourselves to controlled discomfort, the less we fear hardship when it comes unexpectedly. We become stronger, calmer, and more adaptable. We develop the ability to say, "I can handle uncertainty. I can endure discomfort. I am not controlled by external conditions." This is true emotional detachment, not becoming numb, but becoming unshakable. Why modern comfort is a trap? Society conditions us to chase comfort and avoid struggle. Everything around us is designed to make life as effortless as possible. We have climate-controlled environments to avoid discomfort. We have food delivery apps to avoid hunger. We have endless entertainment to avoid boredom. We have digital distractions to avoid discomfort with our own thoughts. But here's the problem. Comfort makes us fragile. Discomfort makes us unshakable. When everything is easy, our tolerance for difficulty shrinks. Minor setbacks feel catastrophic. Any discomfort, whether it's a delayed order, an unpleasant conversation, or even slight hunger, becomes intolerable. This is why most people today fall apart at the first sign of adversity. The issue isn't that life is hard. The issue is that most people haven't trained for hardship, and when life tests them, they fail. How hardship builds mental toughness. Think about it. Athletes don't train only when there's a game. Soldiers don't prepare only when there's war. They train constantly, so that when the moment comes, they're ready. Mental toughness works the same way. It's not built in times of peace. It's built by training discomfort when you don't have to. This is why voluntary discomfort is a superpower. It trains you to function in chaos, to handle stress without breaking, and to detach from the need for external comfort. So how do we practice this in modern life? The Stoic hardship experiment. Strengthen your mind in 3 days. To break free from the comfort trap, start practicing voluntary discomfort. Here's a simple but powerful 3-day Stoic hardship experiment to train your mind. Day 1. Take a cold shower. It's unpleasant, but it forces you to control your mind instead of your impulses. Lesson: discomfort doesn't last. The more you lean into it, the less control it has over you. Day 2. Skip a meal, unless medically necessary. This builds self-discipline, detaches you from cravings, and teaches you that hunger is not an emergency. Lesson: You don't need instant gratification. You control your desires. They don't control you. Day 3. Avoid all luxuries. No TV, no social media, no junk food. Live simply for a day to prove to yourself that you can function without distractions. Lesson: most of what we think we need is actually just a habit of dependency. At first, it'll feel uncomfortable. That's the point. But as you practice leaning into discomfort, you'll start noticing something incredible. You become less afraid of challenges. You become less reactive to stress. You become more confident in your ability to handle anything life throws your way. Expanding your comfort zone through hardship. Your tolerance for discomfort is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger you become. If you can handle small discomforts, you'll handle bigger challenges with ease. If you can push through voluntary hardship, real hardship won't break you. By training yourself to endure discomfort, you expand your comfort zone, not by making life easier, but by making yourself stronger. This is why the Stoics didn't just study hardship. They practiced it. They walked barefoot in the cold. They fasted, even when food was available. They slept on the floor, even when they had beds. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they knew a prepared mind fears nothing. The freedom of embracing discomfort. Imagine a life where you are no longer controlled by comfort. You no longer depend on luxury to feel at peace. You no longer panic when things don't go your way. You no longer see hardship as something to fear, but as something to train for. This is true strength. This is what separates those who collapse under pressure from those who thrive in adversity. And this leads us to the next crucial principle: learning how to detach from emotional triggers. Because once you've trained your mind through discomfort, the next step is learning how to control your emotions in the heat of the moment. Principle 4. Detach from emotional triggers. Think about the last time someone's words got under your skin. Maybe it was an insult, a criticism, or a dismissive comment. Did it ruin your mood? Did it make you overthink? Did it lead to an impulsive reaction you later regretted? If so, it wasn't the words that hurt you, it was your attachment to them. The truth is, nobody can control your emotions unless you give them permission. But most people don't realize this. They walk through life reacting to everything, like puppets being controlled by external forces. Stoicism teaches that true strength comes from emotional detachment, not in the sense of suppressing emotions, but in mastering them. When you master your emotions, you become untouchable. Why do we get emotionally triggered? Because of attachment. Attachment to our ego, to validation, to expectations of how others should treat us. But here's a brutal truth: nobody owes you kindness, respect, or fairness. If you expect the world to cater to your emotions, you'll always be disappointed. This is why the Stoic pause is one of the most powerful techniques for emotional control. Instead of reacting immediately to a situation, pause. Give yourself space between stimulus and response. If someone insults you, take a deep breath before saying anything. If an email upsets you, don't reply right away. If something triggers your anger, step back and observe your emotions rather than becoming them. How to break free from emotional reactions. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, wrote, "If a person gave your body to a passerby, you would be furious. Yet you let others take control of your mind, making it disturbed and troubled whenever they choose." In other words, why do we allow random people, events, or situations to dictate our inner peace? The answer is conditioning. Most of us have spent years reacting emotionally to everything around us. But you can rewire your brain to respond differently. One of the best tools for this is Stoic journaling. Every night, Write down. What triggered you today? Why did it affect you? How could you have responded differently? Over time, you'll start noticing patterns in your emotional reactions. And once you become aware of them, you weaken their power over you. The pause and reframe method. When something triggers an emotional reaction, follow these steps. 1. Pause. Take 3 deep breaths. Interrupt the automatic reaction. 2. Reframe. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Shift your perspective. 3. Respond intentionally. Choose a calm, rational response that aligns with your higher self. With practice, you'll reach a point where nothing external can shake you. Imagine living a life where insults don't sting, failures don't break you, and external chaos doesn't disrupt your inner peace. That's the power of Stoic detachment. And this brings us to the next principle, learning how to detach from fear and anxiety through the practice of negative visualization. Because once you control your emotions, the next level is controlling your fears. If you're finding these insights valuable, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who could benefit from this knowledge. The more people understand emotional detachment, the stronger we become as individuals and as a society. Now, let's move on to the next Stoic principle, how to detach from fear and anxiety using the power of negative visualization. Principle 5. Practice negative visualization. What's the worst thing that could happen? Most people don't want to think about this question. They push away thoughts of failure, loss, or worst-case scenarios, hoping that if they ignore them, they won't happen. But this avoidance creates a paradox. The more we fear something, the more power it has over us. Stoicism teaches us to do the opposite, to confront our fears head-on, to visualize our worst nightmares, and in doing so, to free ourselves from their grip. This is known as premeditatio malorum, the practice of negative visualization. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor of Rome, practiced this daily. He would imagine losing his empire, his family, and his health, not to dwell on negativity, but to mentally prepare himself for anything that could happen. By doing this, he weakened the shock factor of life's unpredictability. Why does this work? Because fear is a product of the unknown. When we refuse to confront what we fear, it grows in power. But when we face it mentally, when we visualize ourselves handling the worst possible outcomes with strength and resilience, we start to realize something profound. We can endure more than we think. How fear controls us, and how to break free. Most people live in fear without even realizing it. They fear failure, so they never take risks. They fear rejection, so they never express themselves fully. They fear discomfort, so they stay in their comfort zones. But what if fear wasn't something to avoid, but something to train against? Think about a job interview. If you've never prepared for rejection, the mere thought of failing might cause anxiety. But if you've mentally rehearsed rejection, if you've visualized yourself staying calm and composed even after hearing a no, then suddenly, it doesn't seem so terrifying. This is what negative visualization does. It acts as a mental vaccine against fear, immunizing you against emotional suffering. The daily negative visualization practice. Every morning or night, spend 5 minutes imagining a worst-case scenario in one area of your life. Then, mentally walk yourself through it, not as a victim, but as a Stoic, with clarity and control. 1. Imagine losing something valuable. Your job, your reputation, your comfort. 2. Visualize yourself handling it with strength. Calm, unshaken, adapting to the situation. 3. Realize that even in the worst case, you would still survive and rebuild. By doing this, you strip fear of its mystery. You turn the unknown into something familiar. And the next time life throws an unexpected challenge your way, you'll already be mentally prepared. This leads us directly to the next principle: accepting mortality through the practice of memento mori. Because if we can visualize our worst fears, the final step is to confront the ultimate reality, the fact that one day we won't be here at all. Principle 6. Accept mortality, memento mori. If there's one truth that applies to every human being, it's this: we are all going to die. It's uncomfortable to think about, which is why most people avoid it. But avoiding death doesn't stop it from coming. The Stoics took a different approach. Instead of fearing death, they embraced it. They used it as a tool to live more intentionally, to free themselves from trivial worries, and to focus on what truly matters. This is the essence of memento mori. Remember that you must die. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, believed that making peace with death was the key to ultimate emotional freedom. He wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." In other words, people act as if they have infinite time to chase meaningless distractions, yet they panic when reminded of their own mortality. But here's the paradox: once you accept death, you stop fearing life. How fear of death controls people. Most people don't realize how much the fear of death influences their decisions. It's why they cling to comfort, avoid risks, and try to control everything around them. They believe that if they can create enough security, they can escape the inevitable. But no amount of money, success, or status can prevent death. And if you're constantly trying to outrun mortality, you'll never be truly free. This is why the Stoic approach is so powerful. Instead of denying death, they meditated on it daily. They reminded themselves that each moment could be their last, not to be morbid, but to keep their priorities in check. The memento mori reflection ritual. Here's how you can integrate memento mori into your daily life. 1. Each morning, remind yourself, today could be my last. How do I want to live it? 2. Before making a decision, ask, would this still matter if I knew I had only a year left? 3. At night, reflect, if today had been my last, would I be satisfied with how I lived it? This practice isn't about dwelling on death. It's about enhancing life. When you fully grasp that time is limited, you stop wasting it. You stop holding grudges, stop waiting for the right moment, and start living with purpose. And this leads us to our final Stoic principle: cultivating inner self-sufficiency. Because once you detach from fear, the last step is to become truly independent, free from external validation and attachments. Principle 7. Cultivate inner self-sufficiency. True freedom doesn't come from wealth, status, or external success. It comes from needing less. The fewer external things you depend on for happiness, the more unshakable you become. The Stoics called this autarky, self-sufficiency of the mind. Most people spend their lives chasing validation, approval, and material possessions, believing that these things will bring them fulfillment. But the more you need from the outside world, the more power you give away. You become dependent on praise, on relationships, on circumstances going your way. And when these things fail you, you suffer. But what if you could cultivate an inner world so strong that nothing external could disturb your peace? This is what Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius all practiced. They trained themselves to find contentment within, rather than relying on external sources of happiness. They didn't reject wealth or success, but they refused to be owned by them. Why external attachments make you weak? If your happiness depends on a relationship, what happens when that relationship ends? If your identity is tied to your job, what happens when you lose it? If your confidence comes from external praise, what happens when criticism comes instead? When you depend on external things to feel secure, you become emotionally fragile. But when you cultivate inner self-sufficiency, you become untouchable. This doesn't mean isolating yourself from the world. It means learning to enjoy things without being controlled by them. The minimalist mindset shift. To strengthen inner self-sufficiency, practice living with less, not just physically, but mentally. 1. Reduce your dependence on validation. Stop seeking approval. Do things for their own sake, not for recognition. 2. Detach from material possessions. Ask yourself, if I lost everything tomorrow, would I still be okay? 3. Spend time alone. Learn to enjoy your own company, without distractions. When you build this mindset, nothing outside of you can shake your peace. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer react, you observe. You no longer cling, you flow. And this brings us to the final lesson of this journey. True detachment is the ultimate freedom. At this point, you've learned 7 powerful Stoic principles that can help you develop unshakable emotional freedom. You now understand how to control what you can and let go of what you can't. Reframe your perspective on life's events. Train voluntary discomfort to build resilience. Detach from emotional triggers and master your responses. Use negative visualization to overcome fear and anxiety. Embrace mortality to live with more purpose and clarity. Cultivate inner self-sufficiency and break free from external attachments. But here's the real question. Will you apply them? Most people consume knowledge, feel inspired, and then go back to their old habits. But Stoicism isn't just about knowing, it's about doing. If you want to become mentally resilient, you must practice these principles daily. Ask yourself, which of these principles do I struggle with the most? Which one do I need to start implementing today? Drop a comment below and share your biggest takeaway. And if this video brought you value, take a moment to like this video to help more people discover these powerful ideas. Subscribe to the channel for more life-changing insights on Stoicism and mental resilience. Share this with a friend who needs to hear this message today. Now, go out there and start practicing. Because at the end of the day, emotional detachment isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's about being free.